Hola community, this is Pablo Vazquez. I'm live and live. I was about not to make this show for today. I'm feeling a bit of a toothache, so if I cut it shortly it's because my medicine went out. So let's do it quick. Let's go through all the things that have been new in Blender and the Blender community lately, starting with Blender 2.1, 2.91, 2.90.1. Why so many numbers? All right, 2.90 had a few too many crashes on at the very well. Actually, I don't know if it were too many crashes or just the one crash that was very annoying and it made the whole app feel like very unstable. So there is a new release, 2.90.1, addresses so many fixes. I think it's around 39 bug fixes are addressed here, and there's already some candidates for 2.90.2. So yes, this is a recommended update if you are if you're using 2.90. If you want to use the latest and more stable, please download it because it's gonna be a lot more stable and doesn't have any new features. So it's very you can trust. You should be able to trust this one. If you want to learn more about what changed, you can see it on the wiki page here on wiki.blender.org. You're gonna see in release notes here at 2.90, and then here the corrective releases. And here you're gonna read all the 39 bug fixes. So there is crashes, mainly crashes when deleting custom orientations, duplicating, many little ones. So why are there so many crashes? Well, because there's new features, of course, but also because maybe they didn't get reported on time. So here's where it's like, okay, whose fault is this one? Anybody's fault. No, nobody's fault, or anybody. Nobody's fault. It's these things like this just slide in. But if you want to help to prevent this from happening, test Blender as much as possible when you are when you're use it on your day-to-day. Even the development versions of Blender 2.91 now you can also report. So the more you report, the more we get the more stable Blender for everybody. So I think I chewed too hard and my tooth is hurting again, so let's do it quickly. There is a thread with questions here, and the title of the thread is a new feature that I'm going to talk about in a bit. There's already 10 questions. I always try to get to go fast in this one. So all right, first and foremost, the title of this video is about a new feature in EEVEE that it improves or actually got support for another kind of specular shading, that is the GGX multi-scatter. So if you use a few cycles, you're familiar with the different kinds of shading options that you have here. For example, in the principal BSDF you have the options, but also in the it's in the specular, then you should be able, no, wrong, principal BSDF, that was before it was implemented. Principal BSDF has the option for multi-scatter and GGX and regular scattering. It's a bit slower, but it's a bit more it's a bit, not a huge performance loss, but it's kind of nicer depending on the surface, of course. So when would you use it? Well, whenever it looks better, right? But if it has a little bit of performance, just try to use it in character or objects that are near the camera and not the ones that are far away. So yeah, let's see what else is new. There was actually added a space on a paper. This is very interesting, although I don't understand anything. You can see that, oh, it was actually by Christoph Harry, was edited from Pixar. And there's whole implementation here, whole paper, lots of math, but you can see the effect. Oops, I actually downloaded it. Yeah, so lots of numbers and stuff. Now in Blender. Let's continue. So this one is let's go into the we were with EEVEE. We should start with the user interface. And there are not so many updates. Actually, this is a very it's an old one from 2.90, but I want to give a shout out to Matias Herrero for adding this little patch. I don't think you have many patches around. I was stalking your profile, and it's only this one patch, but it's something that I think we mentioned in the past, and probably watching the live stream noticed this and then implemented it. So what is it? It's a small thing. It's when you add a force field. It's a paper cut. I think it was on right click select at some point as well. So when you add a force field object, so force field, the object will have the name of the force field type. So yeah, it's not gonna change your life, or maybe it does. If you add a lot of force fields, it will. But so nice. Now the data and the object, but not the data because it's an empty, but we're gonna have this name. So properly named, easier to follow. So thank you, Matias Herrero. Just wanted to give a shout out and maybe motivate other developers or want to be developers in the community to introduce you, to get into Blender by fixing or by addressing these little paper cuts. The paper cuts is this list of features, of little annoyances that will make Blender much nicer if they weren't there. Some of them maybe are bigger projects, some of them are smaller, like in this one, like in the patch that I just showed you, and you can read more about them in the user feedback section. So it's in Blender development. You're gonna see it's in other topics, and then you should see here user feedback. And in user feedback, here you can add the paper cuts. It's in usability. So let's see the channel. Pablo looks tired. Yes, I mentioned in the beginning. Actually, I didn't even go. I didn't say it properly. I didn't go to work today, even to the studio. I stayed at home because I woke up with a pain in my tooth, and I stayed at home. Actually, I wasn't gonna make the show, but I had I have my paracetamol here. I had it like an hour ago, and now I feel fine. But I don't know how much it's gonna last, so I will hurry up because it's gonna start hurting again, and tomorrow I gotta go to the dentist. Fun stuff, yay! Let's continue. So user interface, there is a few tweaks that are harder to show here. It just makes the UI better. So there are a few items here, icons that are superposed in other in widgets, for example. So the objects for selecting a camera, for example, selecting an object from the widget has like an eyedropper picker and the X, for example. These ones you were not able to click on them if you had text in them. So now you can click on it and it will go away, and also highlights with a mouse over effect. Tiny one, but useful one. You know what also is useful in cycles? This is not a cycles feature today, but it will be in the future, because this is just building hype. The Kevin Dietrich added this feature that I was reading along, and I have no idea what it does because it's all smart stuff. However, this little bit interests me. Those flags are meant for detecting which socket has changed, so in the future we can have more granular updates. And this is what got me very excited about, because if you can go even into a socket level to tell what changed, and then cycles could only update that one part, that is pretty big. So yeah, excited about that feature. Nothing to show yet here, but it's always good to see that for optimizations, for optimizing cycles. And speaking of optimizations, this was my built-in segue, and I didn't press the sound to switch topics. In modeling / modifiers, there is an improvement, a huge improvement for the Weld modifier. How big of an improvement it is? Well, in 2.90, a Weld modifier for whatever test, for this example test, was 1.69 seconds. 1.69 seconds. How much is it in the patch? 0.029. So if all the modifiers are applied, then this patch will be 14 times faster than master. That's just crazy. So 14 times faster than master if you apply all the modifiers and you use the Weld modifier, the new modifier that's been around for a few versions that allows you to like remove doubles but in a modifier in real time. It's awesome. If you haven't used it yet, go use it. It's called Weld, like soldering, but in a modifier. So it's like dynamic remove doubles, or merge by distance, how the kids call it nowadays. Thank you everybody for the nice comments in the chat about me being human. If it starts hurting, it's okay to stop the stream. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was my warning at the beginning, that I had the medication an hour ago, so maybe it will wear off soon and then I will have to stop. But so far so good, so let's continue. I made a video this last week about the collection support for, let's go into Blender Foundation YouTube channel, this same channel, and I also made a bunch of videos last week about features. I was a good boy and I managed to keep doing it. The booleans that now support collections, and then also I made a video about the trace images. I did it on Monday, and then another one that I'm gonna show in a bit, but that's related to sculpting. So there is a self option in the exact modifier that allows you to check to do the boolean operator on itself. I also show it in this video on the new booleans, so if you want to learn more, go to the same channel. I made a playlist that is called Blender.Today, that shows Blender.Today, not the live, Blender.Today, and that one has all the little videos that I've been making. Let's continue. How's the chat? Everything okay? Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, people thanking Kevin Dietrich. I think we're gonna he opened a branch recently on Cycles procedural API, and I'm very curious about that too, but nothing yet to show there. You know what we have to show here? Sculpt. So this is in the Pablo Navarro section of the day. We have sculpt, scale, cloth, filtering. You can now scale and apply a cloth effect at the same time. So ignore the artifacts in the video, but it's just as you scale it, it stretches or collapses the clothing. So super nice. I think this is one of the few that we're missing, right? Compared to, because we already had on rotation, like in the post brush. Now if you can scale it and simulate, that should be all, I think. Next, in the video that I made last week, on the one that is called multiple objects, sculpt multiple objects, I also show a few other features. I show the feature that now you can, if you rotate around the view, you can make it so the HDR is locked to the camera. So it means that as you rotate the view, the HDR, even your own custom HDR, is going to be locked to the camera. So it behaves like if it was a matte cap, like if your EEVEE material was a matte cap. Because matte caps is just shading with the lighting attached to the camera, pretty much. Let's see. It has its own section now. It's a... Well, we could start calling the sections or per their developers. So the Grease Pencil will be the Antonio Vazquez section, and now there or the Clement will be the EEVEE section. Now in reality, all types of developers, all kinds of developers are part of. They own a module, but they also have to get reviews from other people. So it's It's a teamwork. All right, let's continue. So the lower the default cloth deformation constraint strength. So this is a setting that this is a change, internal change that lowers the constraint strength when using the cloth deformation. So in the past, it will give you these results, which end up in like this kind of flickery effect. Well, now this should be less flickery and it should be more there, more brainy. It's just these little changes that keeps improving, and sometimes I would even think that it was my mistake because I was doing the simulation. I will get these flickery effects here, glitchy effects, but actually it turns out it was a simulation. So okay, let's continue. Fade inactive geometry, I already mentioned that effect, and then you can check in the video. Actually, it's better if you check this video because I mentioned these other features. The one that fades the inactive geometry, so all the objects that you're not sculpting on, they have this setting now in the overlay where you can fade them. You can make them less opaque, and you can focus on the one object that you are working on. Then with this option, it works really well when you are using it with other parts of with the switch object operator, which I also show here at some point, where you can press D to change and to switch to another object. So here I should press D and then I switch into different objects. Alert, note on this. When I made this video a few days ago, this option was on by default. However, this option now is under the experimental, the operator of switching objects. So when you're sculpting, so if you're sculpting, if you're sculpting and you have a bunch of objects, to change between the objects and press D to change, it's not gonna work unless you enable the option from preferences, experimental. So it's in developer extras and then experimental, and then you need to turn on the switch object operator. Why was it disabled? Was it removed? Because there are issues with undo. Undo apparently is not working always super reliable when you switch objects, and this is like introducing errors. And idea is that master should be as stable as possible, or if the tool is not there yet, it should be marked as such. If it's experimental, it should be marked as such. So that's why this setting for now is there, but hopefully it will be on by default in 2.9. Just PSA in case you try to use it and you don't find it. Then more. There is now I mentioned also in the video that the X, Y, and Z symmetry options are now using the mesh symmetry. So they are not per mesh, and they affect all the other painting and editing modes. So that makes it more like if you're editing a part of a mesh with symmetry enabled, so it affects the other side, when you're painting, you probably want the same. You want to be connected. So now it is connected. But you can also disconnect it, turn it off. And it's a per mesh setting, because some meshes you want to connect in the x-axis to have symmetry in the x-axis or the y-axis, and so on and so forth. So that's why. And the last feature that I can show you here, that I have to show you here, is the last. I went through all the commits, so I'm even gonna cover, if I manage, the ones from that I didn't get to cover last week. This one, line gestures and mask line tool. So now you can mask out with gestures. So in this case, for example, you can draw a line and it's gonna paint from the right side of the tool. So maybe it takes a bit to get used to it, to see, okay, which side is gonna mask. So if I cut it here, it's gonna take this side, or what, depending on the direction. So if you go it from bottom to top, it will be the right side. If you do top to bottom, it's going to be on the left side of the screen. But you get used to it. It's the kind of things that is very, once you see it working, it's actually very very intuitive. So yeah, line gestures for the mask line tool. Super awesome, because this can be also applied for other parts of Blender. Not only that. Let's continue. I'm gonna have some tea. See, it's not tea. It's tea, but made of mate, yerba mate. It tastes the same, similar. That is all for curves. For sculpt actually. Let's switch into curves. Curves. Last week I made a video, or 2 weeks ago I made a video about the support for custom bevel profiles on text objects and curves. So now curves can have these user-defined custom bevel profiles, and it works the same for text objects. So this is super awesome. I made a video already. You don't have to, maybe I don't need to show it here, but I made this video, text and curves with custom bevels, 18,000 views, so I probably seen it already. Yeah, basically you can just draw in this little widget the shape of the bevel that you want. So there is also another improvement that goes together with that, is the now all geometry types can have caps, can end with caps. So you see they're gonna give you this nice ugly mesh, but I mean it's triangles, right? So then I guess in the end, if usually you don't see this part, but that's the fastest probably way of building a cap on a curve. So yeah, mate cocido, someone said in the chat. Yes, that is mate cocido. It's kind of mate cocido because this is just mate, and mate cocido, buying it in the Netherlands is very expensive. So what I do, I just put, so I get a bag and then I put some yerba mate in it, and then I have it there. So the poor man's mate cocido. It's otherwise too expensive to buy it because they import it from Argentina. Next. What is next? Let's switch modes into UV. So in UV editing, now the 3D mesh editing for edge loop selection now matches the UV editor matches the 3D view. So the same way you do edge loop selection, now it works in both editors. So this is awesome, because in the previous release in 2.90 there was a lot of work and efforts going into like improving the UV editor selection tools, and now this adds on top of that, and the final goal is that editing in 3D is just as easy as editing in the UV editor. But we know we need more tools for that. We need the straighten tool in Blender needs a lot of work. There is a bunch of tasks, design tasks, that are already trying to tackle that in the roadmap. So don't worry. But yes. Also, I wrote them down here. It's like UV face loops when in face select mode match the edit mesh. Yeah, when you're in face select, you can also select loops in face select mode, and you can also select linked with sync selection in vertex and edge modes. So I don't have the link to the commit log, but I wrote them down here. So the UV support, select link with sync select, match 3D mesh editing for edge loop selections, and select the face loops when in face select to match the edit mesh in the viewport. All right, let's switch topics. Let's move on to the next one. What's UV? Somebody's asking about what is UV. What is UV? UV, does it have like, because UV, I know it comes from X, Y, Z. So the two coordinates before that is UV, X, Y, Z. UV mapping. Let's see what the Wikipedia says about UV mapping. 3D modeling process of projecting a 2D image to the 3D model surface for texture mapping. The letter is UV. We denote the axis of the 2D texture because X, Y, Z are already used for the 3D object. While W, yes, is for the quaternions. So that is, yes, UV, ultraviolet. Yeah, it's not the, it's just because they were in the 2D space. So when somebody do it, is there a, what is before U? T the coordinates for what 1D. Let's move on into the next topic. So this topic is let's go to the Antonio Vazquez section. The Grease Pencil. Grease Pencil got a bunch of updates that I mentioned a few last week, I think, but let's go through them again, through the ones that I didn't mention. So add the fill option to determine the layers used for boundary strokes. So now you can actually know which layers are going to be used for this boundary. For example, you can choose the visible layers, the active layer, the layer above the active, or below the active. And there is even a video on this, if I'm not wrong. This was actually suggested in right click select. You see, for people that say that right click select doesn't get any love, it does. Let's go to the YouTube of the Blender developer. So YouTube Blender developers. Was that the URL? Blender coders? Yes, Blender developers. Grease Pencil fill tool improvements. So this was exactly 1 month ago. This video was published, and now you can also invert fill with the control key. So when you're using the fill tool, you can invert to apply to, for example, in this case, it's clicking in the white area, and because it's using the invert mode, is painting everything else that is not in the white area. So that speeds up things a lot, and you can limit this per layer. These are all the options that I was just mentioning. In this case, it's using the active layer, so it's just a matter of selecting the active layer from the list, and then you just click anywhere, because it's always going to do only the active layer. So this is also improving the workflow for the fill tool a lot more. Grease Pencil tool team is also working, a little heads up, they're working on an add-on for improving or for extending the Grease Pencil tools when you are doing hardcore Grease Pencil work. This add-on, of course, is going to be free and open source. Part of Blender is going to come built in Blender. It's just going to be maybe disabled by default, so you enable it when you need it. But it's like the Node Wrangler, that it's official, is there, and it just adds functionality. It's maybe like a stage area for some features, you know, first in the add-on that is fast to add and prototype, and then people use it, test it, give feedback, and then that feature gets promoted into Blender core. Then let's split primitive and number points to the top bar. Oh, I got a Bulbasaur in the background. So this page is taking a while to load. I'm going to load the other one in the background. Split primitive operators and add the number of points to the top bar. So now the operators are split to define different default values. This is also required for the future Bezier primitive tools. Aha, hint. This allows to show in the top bar the number of subdivisions. Before, this value was totally hidden, and it was a number of edges. The wheel mouse can be used to override the value while running, but does not change the default value. So interesting. I didn't know that it was hard-coded before. Now you can actually that's super nice. And all the operators share the same code. Cool. Nice. Split primitive operators. And a little hint to the upcoming Bezier curves for Grease Pencil objects. Add parameters to scale the thickness when converting to curves. So you know you can convert Grease Pencil to pretty much anything. So if you have a Grease Pencil monkey, you can go to object, and then you can convert it to a curve. Now when you convert to a curve, you can actually choose, and you can from the operator you can change the thickness of the curve that you are creating. The next feature that we're gonna see is you can also change the sample parameter to the convert curve. Then new option, if you do animation with the Grease Pencil, you may know the interpolate sequence operator that creates between two keyframes, creates a bunch of keyframes in between. Now you can now specify the amount of steps when creating this, so it doesn't do for every frame but only for a few frames, which is pretty neat. By default is set to 1 as before, but now you can also set it to less steps. So in this case it goes every 2, and then interpolate sequence, and then every other frame is gonna add. Super cool. Let's see, EEVEE. No, I had already mentioned EEVEE. The interpolate shortcut in Grease Pencil now is actually a different shortcut, has changed. Now it's Ctrl E. So if you're animating and you do Ctrl E, now you're gonna get the interpolate. So it's the same as doing the interpolation. I don't have the view. It's Ctrl E. Add link and copy functions for shader effects. So let's go see the commit log. Now you can link and copy functions for shader effects, for the effects like the modifiers, but there are only Grease Pencil level. Those are now copyable and linkable. Then implement holdout materials. What is a holdout material? Well. Remember I mentioned in the when was it? Let's go to the Twitter of BlenderToday, because I published a video of the new trace tool for Grease Pencil. The new trace tool allows you to take a black and white image, and it makes a black and white image, and you can make it into geometry. But there are the image that I used, it wasn't the best resolution out here, so they had some issues, and also I wasn't using it completely properly, because there is actually an option in Grease Pencil that allows you to work better when the drawing has holes. How's that? Well, here you can see that Antonio replied to the thread, mentioned several points to consider with trace images. 1, this is the first tool that uses spot trace, which is the library that allows you to do this kind of tracing bitmaps. I have plans for adding more features. Now, there are missing features like image sequences. For the best results in black and white image, bitmap color BMP works great. BMP, yes. 1995 called, and they say they want the format back. This is not to replace hand drawing. No, not designed for that. Absolutely not. You shouldn't replace it with drawing. Just make it easier if you have like a storyboard that you already used. Then the quality of the result depends on the sample value. In the video, the sample is too high to get the cartoony style. But I did that on purpose, by the way. I just like the cartoon style. Pot trace, always trace the perimeter, not the center line. I'm still looking for algorithm to calculate the center line. And for example, you can use here a PNG is a Grease Pencil, and the curve gives you the outline. So you can use a trace to get a curve of a mesh from an image below a Bezier curve generated using a PNG. Let's see. If your result Grease Pencil has some noise, single points, you can use the cleanup tool. Isn't that nice? If your image has holes, Grease Pencil, you can use the new holdout material option. Because a geometry with holes is not supported yet, you can change the color of the holdout from transparent to any color. So it would make some kind of holes in your mesh, but in a material level. So that way you can use it with the new holdout option, which is here in the fill and the stroke panels. Then after the trace, you get Grease Pencil strokes. You can use edit, sculpt, light, modifiers, VFX, and everything. And number 10, if someone wants to know more about the pot trace library, you can find the details here. It's a free and open source library. And also, when you look into here, when people said, oh no, but Inkscape does it better, or no, usually they say like other softwares, but somebody say like, oh, okay, no, I'm gonna keep using Inkscape and then bring it back. Actually, Inkscape is using the same library that Blender. So it's actually the same. It's maybe just a matter of the settings to change. But that's a cool thing about open source libraries, that you can use them in both. You can use it in multiple softwares, and they all share the same. And when they are improved, everybody gets and shares the same. So Grease Pencil, last improvement, improve the default brush draw mode. Yes, when you are drawing, you can use, since 2.90, you can use the active material, setting that you have turned on, or you can override it to paint with the material or the vertex color. So these two options here, you can choose material, vertex color. And there was, for a while, there was this drop down that is called mode, and you can choose active, material, vertex color. However, this was a bit confusing because this setting here will actually affect the options here. So it will override these options. So now this has become a little pin. So the pin basically makes you always use that mode. If you're in material, you pin it, and then you always paint with materials, and the same for fill. So it's the same, no functionality has changed really, just it's the same. Instead of using material in this drop down, you just press the pin when you're in material mode, and the same for vertex color. So it's a change in the user interface, but the functionality is really just the same. So I like those changes when instead of a drop down with 3 options, just a pin. Let's continue. So how is the chat going, by the way? I haven't checked. I've been reading about people saying nice things, people asking what is the script you're using for random ArtStation post on the new tab. Oh, it's called it's ArtStation. It's an ArtStation plugin. If you Google it for ArtStation Chrome extension, you're gonna get it. However, if you're doing live streams like I do, I don't recommend it completely because the settings are very minimal. You can choose the all media and you can change the subject matter, but you can't really, for example, disable not safe for work stuff, for example. And sometimes I'm streaming and then I will get like a anime big parts, and I don't know if I want to show that all the time, but it's you're often really nice. The cool thing is that sometimes I get a cool artist and I just click on it on the name, and then I can see it. It's like, oh, I like this artist. So then you go, and it's very inspirational, but it's a lottery. So here, this is good. This is good. Well, or some of this is awesome, and this is borderline what you would like to show in a live stream, because you know sometimes if you show a picture even for a few seconds, then YouTube thinks you are sharing this kind of stuff, and then your video gets marked as such. Why do you hate real art? I don't hate real art. I will be fine. The problem is when I am when I'm streaming on a channel with 700,000 people, yeah, if it was my own channel, maybe I wouldn't care, but because it's a work channel, so I don't want to, you know, harm Blender brand. All right, let's continue to improve the Blender brand. Blender video sequence editor. Here, this video sequence editor is getting some love. This option has been around for a month already, but it's exciting, and I've never actually. I should make a video about this, and like an individual video, because we should promote this, and every time there is even a small feature should get people excited, because that's how you get more people to contribute. It's like, oh, actually the sequencer is not dead, I'm gonna make a little feature, and then you spread the love for making features, and that's what keeps development going, at least from my experience working with open source all these years. 18 years. Sequencer. Implement zoom to fit view mode. Zoom to fit view mode is a feature that allows you to let's see if we can have an option, a picture here, otherwise I will see it here. So how is the current state? It was almost a joke. It was really just not what you will expect. So this frame, you can see that here spring is super stretched. it just doesn't work. So the proposal was to get it, fill the blanks with black and just stretch it, scale it to fit properly. Then the same with the preview mode. Sometimes it will get stretched, and what you want is usually fit to the zoom. And this is how it actually works. Let's see here. This GIF was showing it perfect. So this is why it works right now. There is an option in the view menu that you can say auto fit preview, and now the image will scale properly. However, this is not just some script kiddie that made the I don't know, that on scale just scale it. Actually, there's a lot of engineering here. Sergey Sharybin, you probably know him from his work on motion graphics, motion tracker editor, or the depth graph, all those hardcore parts in Blender. So when Sergey codes something, codes it really well. So well though that this is even optimized, and instead of how Blender used to do it in the past, that it will draw always the high quality image even if your picture was small. Now this is actually only rendering this tiny, like when it shows it, it's only rendering that size. So it's optimized, and it's just faster. Basically, all these words just to say that is fast and faster. Another feature that improves the speed of the video sequence editor transform effect is this commit by Richard Antalik. He made in his 8-core system, this test got about 3.5 times faster processing speed for the transform effect strip. The strip is now multi-threaded, so it's properly using, and this is CPU. So I don't know if you remember a few weeks back when people were asking, so what is the future of the sequencer? I mentioned that there are plans for the video sequence editor, but these plans are mainly targeted at performance first. Performance before anything, because if you have a slow editor, then why even adding features, right? So first to make it fast. Also, people asking, what about GPU support? Why is the sequencer not using the GPU yet? Again, that is about performance. I asked with the developers, and they all mentioned like, yes, adding GPU support is in the roadmap. It's not even maybe that hard to do for some operations. But first, the focus should be on CPU. So first make it as fast as possible in the CPU, and then on top of that add GPU support. That is amazing. I love that they think that way, because it makes it like for people that maybe don't have a super fast graphics card, it makes improvements for them, but also for everything. Like maybe you're using the graphics card for something else, and then the CPU for other parts. I don't know, the sky is the limit. If you're using sequencer strips, like scene strips, you could use the GPU for the actual drawing of the strip, and then CPU for other stuff. So yeah, super nice. That is. How about a Blender donation day once a year? Here is Piscithia asks. Well, it should be every day, the Blender donation day. There are some websites that do like oh, this month we donate to Blender, whatever. Yeah, don't do that stuff. Just donate directly to Blender. It's you know, you can, the Blender Development Fund. I think this is just the most direct way, because if you're gonna give a little percentage of the little percentage that you get from selling your own assets, then it's like even minimizing what you make. So it shouldn't happen. You should just make as much, but contribute from what you think Blender deserves, but from your own heart. The Blender donation day, I don't know. In the Blender birthday is on I think it's the 4th of January, so maybe that could be, is in January. It's a Blender anniversary. Let's see if we can, oh no, here, blender.org anniversary. So here, Blender 25th anniversary is in the 2nd of January. I got it wrong. 2nd of January. Maybe we can unofficially, even though I'm talking in the official Blender channel, I didn't tell you this. What about making the 2nd of January the Blender Christmas? And if you feel like you want to help out, maybe make that your feel-good moment of the day. And if you want to donate, maybe choose that. Could be a nice way to start the year. All right, so I have a bunch of other things that I want to that I wanted to talk about here for the IO outliner, some outliner improvements, and potpourri, but I'm running out of time. So I'm gonna answer some questions, and I'm gonna here after the video sequence, I'm gonna do what I did last week, which is moving this bit for next week. To talk about improvements in Blender and try to answer as much as possible from the 21 comments that are here. Is that okay? Thank you. All right, let's see. Yes, actually, if you want to help Blender, giving a like to this video, it helps. I don't know if you noticed, but there's no video in the Blender YouTube channel that has advertisement on. It's part of the, you know, it's part of the giving the, I don't know, it's out of respect, I think, to keep the community happy. But giving a like to the video makes the video be seen by more people. Kausanagi asks, hello Pablo, I worried about Pablo working on full redesign of how sculpt mode performance works. Let's see. So 3 days ago, I'm going to start working on a full redesign, Pablo Navarro says, of how sculpt mode works, which hopefully should fix most of the performance issues and make Blender usable for high poly sculpting. Some results of a prototype using an i7. So on the left, I guess, is the current Blender, and on the second, on the other side is a, wow. So yeah, this is coming. Actually, I saw this thread before, and there was a mention by the developer that worked on the B mesh, like the edit mesh system in Blender, and mentioning that the way he did it, they did it, wasn't really meant for sculpting, for like high poly editing. It was mainly an improvement to done just when you're modeling, but not when you're sculpting with like millions of polygons. So yeah. Oh, Joseph actually has some notes here. So no undo yet. It's exciting, but no undo yet. Apparently Pablo is making the undo system per vertex instead of per chunk. Hardcore. Every vertex. What? Wow. All right. Hey, thank you. Everybody started giving a like. There was like 50 likes more now. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let's see. So the next question, thank you, by the way, for bringing this into attention, because it's exciting work. And again, Pablo Navarro is working thanks to the Blender Development Fund. So if you want to support his work and all the other Blender developers' work, it's a good thing to join here, the Development Fund, together with 4,936 people. Hector nos asks. Wow, my Spanglish is strong. Hector is asking us. Hi Pablo, thanks for all the live videos. They're great, thank you. Question, does the library material override feature will be available in Blender 2.91? Library material override. I think so. I haven't tested it myself, but I've seen that the library override system has a lot of improvements in this version. So let's see. Resync operation was added to the outliner. So no. Delete and relink data was added to the outliner. Nope. Support insertion of items into pi defined. No. An operator was added to convert proxies to library. And more data has been made overridable. Armature data. But I think then it was in 2.90 then. I think. Let's see, where's that? It's in, not here, it's in IO, file IO. I can't find it here. Well, I think it was, but otherwise just you should just test it, but it should be added because it was object, it was modifiers, now armature data. Should be. Danon Pan asks, is it possible to make lines in the graph editor clickable? Being able to click only on vertex is sometimes difficult. You can, yeah, like the lines. And what happens when you click on the line? What would happen? The thing, or when you have overlapping lines, that's also another issue, right? Like if you have so if you have these lines, you can double click to get the whole, no, here you can double click on the line here to select the whole line. But what would happen when you click on it though? It will highlight it. Do we need pre-selection highlighting? No, that will be confusing. How do you imagine this feature to work? You mouse over and then you click, and what happens? It selects the whole line, like if it was doing like this, or maybe you need to double click on it. But yeah. Next, when asking for feature requests, is often better to be clear on like the expected result. No, like this is missing, it can be clickable, or like click, double click, right click. What exactly do you mean by clicking? Thanks for the question. The next one, mpintori.zv. Hello Pablo, do you know if there are any new nodes for particle nodes? Every node is a new node for particle nodes. Particle nodes is getting a big rewrite though, so so yeah. No, I wouldn't get into it right now because it might change. So many nodes are not going to change, like math nodes and more the generic ones are not going to change. But yeah, it's good to keep an eye on the development of this. For the time being, I would try to do something else. Use maybe animation nodes or other systems because it's going to be rewritten soon-ish. I mentioned last week that there was that 2 weeks ago, the developer of particle nodes came to Amsterdam for 2 weeks, and I had a lot of meetings on how to work on that. More on that soon. Hopefully when Dalai joins the show, maybe in one of these weeks. Slow Kid says, Hola Pablo, is there news on the implementation of the screen operator patch? No, that's not that I know. This one, the selection. Which one is it? The drag and drop or the... Oh, for swapping. No, there was one that this one is my favorite. No, actually, no, there are no news on this. I think you can always just check the last comment of the patch. Where is it? Is in July. No, it's not here. Maybe I can give I could try and get like a little poke here. The problem with this patch is whether there were two developers working on similar features, so they so they were conflicts, right? One was using some kind of way of editing the screen, and some were using other kinds. But I would love for this patch to be here. I don't know if you noticed, but I do this all the time, like resizing from just pulling in the corners. Like I do this all the time. It's part of my nature. Actually, when the few times that I had to use Windows, I was like missing this feature so much, because the other day the artist Dadus, the artist that made the splash screen of 282, he mentioned in a tweet, he said like, oh yeah, like he liked the way Linux will handle the Windows, and that Windows for the name windows in its name is really bad at handling the windows because for resizing it you actually have to go to the corner and then resizing it. So yeah, for the system operating system that is called Windows, it could have better window management. I don't know, that was funny. All right, let's continue. My tooth is starting to feel funny though. I think the paracetamol is fading. Last July, it seems to get an Easter egg also from the UI magician has goodie, but after we didn't hear anything about it. Thanks for the space and thank you, Slow Kid. I will poke again because I really miss this feature. It's part of, I think it should be in Blender, and it will make it will be a night and day, a game changer for editing your windows, your editors. Boris says, what happened to the Blender 101 project? Mentioned for instance in the Blender Guru interview with Tom Rosendahl. Blender 101 project is also one of those projects that is like the Animation 2020, right? It's like this concept of improving certain parts of Blender, but it's not just the one feature, it's many features. So 101 was being able to tweak Blender and personalize, customize menus and remove buttons, make it simpler for teaching, for example, for different kinds of workflows that are not just Blender shows you everything, but you could tweak it to show you less things or more focus specific. However, yeah, there were improvements in this. There's the application templates feature in Blender that was added that helps on this, but there was no real like maybe full design behind it of what should be tackled. So yeah, the tool system in Blender, that's also part of the 101, to making it more accessible so people can make their own tools. So just like in Animation 2020, the 101 project has many of the features already in Blender: application templates, tool system. It's easier now to add shortcuts, the quick favorites and stuff, but yeah, it needs more traction, more development, more design. I'm already over time, so let's do 3 more questions and I'm gonna take another paracetamol in the meantime. No, I should wait. Chris Dude, how often are you, by the way, supposed to take those? 4 hours, is that okay? Is that legal? Let's continue. Chris Dude, hey Pablo, hope you're doing well, thank you. What are some good resources for learning to write patches for Blender? I have so many ideas for new features, for new modifiers, textures, etc. But I get that developers are constantly busy and they have their hands full. I would like to try writing patches for these features myself. My experience with coding is limited to 3 college courses on Java for business. My planned college degree is more on the animation field than the computer science field, so this will probably have to be a skill I develop on the side. I heard the suggestion that I get my feet wet with writing add-ons in Python, and I get that, but from looking at the tutorials, it looks like the Python API can only do so much, and I fail to see how it will help me to learn to work with Blender's underlying C code and write actual patches for actual new features. So if you want to add new modifiers, new textures, new nodes, you need to learn C and C++. That makes sense. But for other features, you can use Python. However, if you want to be serious and make your own modifiers and textures, then you should try with C and C++. Regarding on resources for learning, I always find it very much easier to learn by example. So basically just go in all the patches and just follow what the patches are. The differential, how do you call it in developer, the Blender.org, the differentials here. These are all little patches, and some of them are not so little, but some of them are rather understandable, especially if they're small, like make the operators, UV image, remove, no, shader. You're gonna find some of these patches that are more like readable, especially the ones that are contributed by the community, like the one I showed earlier by Matias Herrero. This one is actually fairly, like, if you look at the feature, what is that? What does it do? Name force fields using the type force by default. if you look at the code, it went and searched for like, hey, it made a function for get effector default name, and then he added all the variations. If it's a particle field, wind, magnet, harmonic, it will set the names. It will return the names, and then in the function itself here, when it's creating the object, it's getting the effector name, giving the type, and then it gets it, and that's it. That's pretty much it. So instead of defining the name here and just call field, he made it so the object, instead of getting the name field, you get the actual name from the effector. So this is very easy to understand. The code is very clear, and this I think is what makes it more easier to follow and just by example. And also get your patches review posted on Blender Coders, on Blender.Chat. For that, you can get involved in Blender.org. You can go to Blender.org, get involved, and development here. And in development, you can see how to get started, get in touch, ongoing activities. There is even a section for if you want to contribute with like small development tasks like paper cuts. That is also another way of getting involved in Blender. But always just go to the chat. Go to Blender Chat, the channel Blender Coders. That's where all the developers hang out. How's the chat? People are asking me. 4 hours is okay, but depending on your size, you can take on the paracetamol. Wow, I think I've been taking it more often than the 6 hours that people are recommending, unfortunately. But I will try to slow down. All right, next. That is all, I think. I could answer more. Let's see. Someone was able to make a SSGI for EEVEE. When will you guys be able to make a full feature like this? I mentioned this in the past. I mentioned that this is great, it's awesome, but it's a hack. And for something like this to be implemented for real, we need, I think Vulkan, adding Vulkan supporting Blender would help on this. And then another question on last stream, you mentioned Blender focusing on Vulkan migration. Yes, any chance to see the progress and improvements on that? You can follow, there is a branch, there is some work being done in master and some in branches, but you can see, for example, what the user Clement Foucault, the developer of Vulkan, is working on it. So here, the task is called, number is 68990, and here you can see the work that is being done. Porting of the features, right now is mainly on Linux, but I think there are more updates than this. But you can see all the code here. Anyway, I'm dying inside, so I think I need to call it a day. Sorry for how bad it hurts. It hurts if I chew. The problem I mean, we don't have to talk about this here. Anyway, I had a crown job like 2 years ago, and sometimes I get this pain. So I need to see what's going on, but I don't know, a bit scared. Like, what are they gonna do? Like, make it again? Fix it? I don't know. I will try to go tomorrow, or to call at least if things get as bad. Thank you for worrying though. I think I appreciate you worry about these things. I wasn't gonna make the show, but I felt like I should do it. I should take some medicine, do it. It's good to keep the hype going. It's a nice to see you here every week as well. And next week, hopefully, it will be better. Download Blender 2.90.1 update. It's on Steam and Windows Store and Snap. There is it updates automatically. In Blender, not yet, though. Unfortunately, you have to go to Blender.org and download it. But it's gonna make your workflow much more stable. That's it. I will leave you with the epic, even in these days. It's even So I wish I could show you outside. It's super gloomy and there's like mist and everything just blends together. Thanks everybody in the chat. It's been amazing. I will see you again in the next week. Yeah, next video. Next week, same place, same time. I'll try and make more short videos of features that I mentioned here. Let me know what you want to see. Any feature that you want to learn more about, write it down. Bye-bye.